We are talking Terrortory 2. This is a anthology movie written and directed by Kevin Kangas, obviously a follow-on from the original Terrortory movie. It's a low-budget horror, so don't be expecting anything too grandiose from this one, but it's quite a fun little low-budget indie horror. Now there is a kind of mythology to this kind of anthology. Didn't know that was going to rhyme. There you go. Anyway, so the kind of premise here is that there is an area in Maryland in the States, which is kind of this large woodland area, and within this kind of like this territory, there are various different zones, each which house some type of supernatural entity. And our kind of main story, which is our sort of wraparound story, is there is this guy, this old man, trying to kind of map out this area to try and ultimately warn people about not to go into this particular area. And he says that there are kind of pathways which are safe, and actually there are supernatural creatures there that are essentially harmless, but there are many that are not. So he's basically there kind of just trying to kind of ultimately map this area. Then he meets this other guy there who has a reason to try and get to a particular area that's related to the first movie. And there's a couple of other kind of like characters they meet along the way as well. And in that kind of like in this kind of conversation between these two guys, he tells him a number of stories, which ultimately is our kind of like our anthology. But there is this ultimately there's this kind of this wraparound story that kind of like it's really the kind of the main kind of like plot here, and the other ones is just a real kind of like short break here. So what do we think about Terrortory 2? I will briefly talk about the kind of the individual stories, and there's three and kind of like a little mini vignette. The first one has got the only named actor I recognise in Stormi Mayhem, and it's called The Fountain, where there is this kind of this couple stop for ask for directions, and they're trying to find this particular fountain that will ultimately grant them wishes that will kind of be a little bit less than they expected. I've got to say, this first entry was a little weak. There was kind of, you can pretty much guess what's going to happen, and I didn't feel it was particularly well handled. You know, Stormi Mayhem is, like I said, the only actress out of this cast who I recognise from anything else, and she's only a small part of this movie, to be honest with you. It's a kind of seductress, she's very good at that. So it was okay, nothing special, to be honest. This is more of just a, oh my god, look, you know, if you've seen Wishmaster, you know what's coming, basically. There is a second one which is quite fun, I suppose, which is these three kind of like treasure hunters on this kind of trail, and they uncover all these goods, all these kind of like, you know, valuable things along this kind of trail, which is literally these kind of like jack-o'-lantern pumpkins. Now, when you find out what the antagonist is, what the threat is, it's really silly, but it's kind of fun. But it's ridiculously silly. But I like the banter between the three friends, these three older guys. It seems quite natural and kind of like quite fun, I've got to say. But the idea was quite fun with this one. But it ultimately veers into very silly territory. Then we have a kind of a short book, which I'm not going to spoil with you. And our kind of final separate story, I suppose, has the most far-reaching consequences, as it hints that there is a kind of a larger power at work in this forest. And I suspect is the strongest story, and it's ultimately about this kind of like this guy whose family decides that he's going to go into the woods for a camping expedition, and they kind of disappear, and he goes after them, and they kind of ultimately confronts this kind of I guess the ultimate evil which is in this forest, and ultimately has to make a decision about what to do about it. The premise of that one was quite good, I've got to say. There are some kind of quite disturbing imagery in this one, albeit on a very kind of low budget size. And this one does have elements that sort of tie into the larger mythologies and the kind of the other stories as well. So I kind of like that one, although it, you know, like I said, the budget really shows through on that one a little bit. Then we have our main story, which I think I enjoyed the most, purely because we spent the most time with it, and our main actor here, this older guy, is quite a charismatic character, and I kind of quite liked you know, his performance in it. And it relates to a number of different kind of like creatures that are in this thing. The one you will see in the cover, this kind of like smiling Jack, I think it's got this guy with a pumpkin on his head. But it's like a store-bought plastic pumpkin. And this, you know, he's not a serial killer. He acts like a serial killer, but ultimately he's some type of supernatural being. Maybe they should have gone for a natural-looking pumpkin. I don't know, just a plastic one. which has been moulded in a factory doesn't really scream a supernatural threat to me, especially if he's wearing like a checkered shirt and stuff. I don't know. Anyway, it just seemed an odd choice for me. Then we have this kind of the kind of killer clown thing, which I thought relates back to the first film, which is a neat twist that happens with that one. So overall, I actually thought this was quite a fun, cheesy B-movie kind of horror, but it really is a low-budget one, and it kind of feels like, you know, if you're watching things like Creepshow, and I'm not a huge fan of Anthology, so I'm honest, but you know, the higher budget kind of like more sort of high production value ones, this one does really seem quite low in kind of production value, but it still is quite fun and quite inventive. I just don't think hasn't got quite as much polish as I would have liked, and veers in some really sort of cheesy and silly territory, and is a little bit kind of, the ending I've got to say is a little bit kind of convoluted. So overall, it's worth a watch if you are a real kind of B-grade horror fan. If you like, you kind of pick up your DVDs and you've never heard of before, and you think, oh well, you can do a lot worse than this one. So I'll give this one a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.